Thank you. So I am Shalvi Mahajan. I'm working as a senior data scientist at SAP SE. Many thanks to the hosts who gave me the platform to present my topic, one of my favorite topics, so gender bias in machine learning. As the name clearly suggests, what I'm going to talk about, so I'll be talking about how the gender bias first is introduced into machine learning models and how do we tackle them and solve the issues. Um, yeah. So first of all, the agenda for today would be, we will be talking about the context, then about how the source basically arises of that we have such biases in AI, the impact of such biases in the future, and overcoming and reshaping the future. So for the context, so basically, in general, AI should be neutral, right? But because the AI models or the machine learning models, every one of you might know, they are trained on some kind of data set. And since they are trained on some kind of data set, they will always have such bias, whatever the data set already had. And data sets are the reflection of our society. And just gender bias, racial bias, and all other kind of biases are basically what in our society we are dealing in day to day. But now the issue is, if AI is the future, looking at ChatGPT, you can say everyone has AI in their hands now. We cannot discriminate between the genders or the races and things like that, because this will only predominantly force the stereotypes that are existing in our society. And if we want to shape our society into a better future, we need to overcome those. So I'll give you some examples. So for example, if you even type in the translations like this Google Translate or other translation tools, even the doctor there, when you say, let's translate it from, I don't know, English to Spanish. So if I write the doctor, it will always give the pronoun as of a man. And doctor is always related to a man, not a woman. While the women is always related with the nurse, never a doctor, but which is not so in the society, right? But the old data still has such stuff. Then there are different credit card limits for each gender, even with same credit history. You'll be surprised to know that sometimes in most of the companies, the recruiting tools they have, first they filter out the resumes of each one of us. And so it's not just one specific company. I'm just talking about some random company, but this is a known fact that they basically also use these recruiting tools. And for women and men, they also have some kind of biasing. So you won't even know why your application just got out, maybe just because of your gender. So this is very frightening. And where does this AI bias come from? Like I said, because of the data. So right now, for example, your large language models, you train it with a lot of massive amounts of data. You learn the predictions because of the AI model will be prepared based on the based on the patterns that it learns, and it will make a lot of predictions. In fact, the data first of all, you get a data, right? So you process that data, then you analyze that data, then you put into a machine learning model or an algorithm. And if you are, first of all, looking into the data, maybe it has bias, fine. But then you need to pre-process the data in such a way that it overcomes that bias, maybe upsampling, maybe doing some kind of feature control mechanisms that the feature engineering tends to have that thing in mind. But if you are, for example, working on a supervised task, there you also have to label the data, right? And if for example, it's a database where the data is handling a lot of genders, it could be that the labeling has been done with lot of AI professionals, but only 22% of professionals in AI and data science fields are women. So of course, the biasing can come from the gender as well. So in short, in this whole pipeline of generating, collecting, labeling the data, then creating the features, creating the model, and then making the predictions. So in all of these steps, humans are involved. And because humans are involved, we also have inherently some biases. Then the data already has the biases because we, in the end, generated such data. So these are the reasons for the biases. So the data points, first of all, and in fact, so I also have this, whenever the host will share the slides with you, or I will, you will also find the sources of the facts that I'm describing here. So very few women in low and middle income countries even own a phone, so 20% less likely, which means that women have less access to the collection of the data as well, like the generation of the data as well, and this will inherently skew the data set. Even when the data is generated, humans collecting the data decide what to collect and how. So it's anyways painting a very inaccurate picture, concealing important differences between people of different gender identities and hiding potential overrepresentation or underrepresentation. Labeling of data, like I already said. Then, for example, there is one very classic example. So the Gender Shades research project basically had a commercial facial recognition system which uses image data sets, but it also lacks diverse and representative samples in it. So how would my machine learning model learn in the end? It's tricky, right? So these systems misclassified women far more often than men. So these small things are very dangerous because such spatial recognition systems or such recognition systems are also used in detecting melanoma sometimes. So there you have a lot of apps where you can just put a picture of your mole, for example, to see whether the mole is melanomic or not. And if the data set already lacked diverse and representative samples, it might say, because of, let's say, your darker skin tone, and being a woman, if your sample was less, it is misclassifying at an error rate of 35%, for example, here, compared to error rate of 0.8% for lighter skinned men. So it's very risky because then maybe the app is not telling the truth, and it can be health-wise also not fair. So, and features and modeling techniques also can introduce a lot of bias. So we have to make sure if our data set is already biased, maybe upsampling can help here. For example, if you know that the women's data is too little, or darker skinned women data is too little, maybe try to increase the data volume by doing upsampling, increasing the classes so that the data has enough volume that the machine learning model is fair enough. Or you can also make some changes in the features and how do you create the features, maybe giving some kind of score, let's say the weights, for example, right? If you have, like, let's say you have a data set of 1,000 rows, but you only have 100 samples of women and rest others of men. So maybe that the sample that you have for women, maybe give it some weight while evaluating in the machine learning model. So this can really help a lot. So there are also a lot of examples where we can say the biasing occurred when you had this automatic speech recognition, speech-to-text technology, which performed poorly for female speakers compared to the males. And yeah, it can be risky at times, but it can also be very dangerous to whatever we are enforcing in the society coming up. The impact of bias. So the impact of bias is also really bad, as I've discussed it multiple times now. But basically it is also forcing these prejudices, the stereotypes we have in the society, and can also contribute to the setbacks in the gender equality and women's empowerment. We definitely want to improve our future, right? And now we don't want to improve it with a very normal pace. We want to make it fast because we will be responsible for a lot of things in the future. This generation will be. So let's make it maybe, and let's try to solve the problems that we already know about. And so there was some analysis of a lot of systems, and from 1982 to present day, we found that in the paper that was written, that they found that 44.2% demonstrated gender bias, with 25.7% still exhibiting both gender and racial system. And this is about around 133 bias systems that they took a look into. So when talking about the impacts of bias, so this can lead to, for example, unfair allocation of resources. So like I said, when you are giving opportunities for the women while, let's say, applying for a job, there it could be a problem if your application just goes out just because of the gender. They didn't want to hire a woman. And this will deprioritize the women's applications and will also give less resources, less opportunities for the women. So this is very wrong. Then reinforcement of harmful stereotypes. I think I already mentioned about this multiple times, that this is anyways not doing good. Whatever we had in the past, we are enforcing it with the upcoming wave of AI. We are also making it sure now that if we continue doing it, this is not good for the future. So for example, here in my slide, there is this translation software mention, which I also mentioned about that the doctor is always related with a man, while the nurse is always related with the women. And then offensive treatment, for sure. There are some health and mental effects. So health effects are, for example, this melanoma example that I gave. If the detection of darker skinned women is not done in a proper way, the app might say that you don't have melanoma and will ask them not to, probably it's fine if they don't visit the doctor, which can be harmful, right? So just so you know, the apps are still not very well developed to trust on them. So in case of such issues, probably a human consultation or a doctor consultation is much better. But having these apps out in the market is anyways can sometimes also affect the health effects, and also it can also do this mental effects thing. So because you have this in your mind that you are not the first class citizen and you are the second class citizen, even with the races, we have some prejudices in our minds. So we definitely need to figure out how we cut them short. So that's why health and mental effects are very, very important, and also the lower quality of service. Because now with voice recognition system, with facial recognition systems, we got to know that, okay, there exists a lot of gender biasing. This will lead to lower quality of service, the opportunities, and yeah, most of the systems will not perform good for women at all. Yeah, so I think most of the points written here I already covered. So we will now talk about the best practices to overcome the bias. We need to ensure that the diversity in training samples is enough. Either we have it in the data. If we don't have it, we need to. So as a data scientist, as a machine learning developer, it's our responsibility to ensure that we bring the diversity in the training samples, either by collecting a lot of more data, or whatever data you have in your hand, maybe doing upsampling to the classes that are underrepresented, or maybe by introducing some weights, some other things. This will really, really help. Second, ensuring that the humans labeling the sample come from diverse backgrounds. So like I said, very few women are working in AI and data science overall the world. So we need to make sure that the hiring is fair enough, that the people who are labeling the data comes from diverse background, just not one set of eyes, but maybe multiple is required there. So also encouraging machine learning teams to measure accuracy levels separately for each of these categories. Yes, that is very true, because so in not sure how many of you here are data scientists and machine learning practitioners, but whenever you have a machine learning model built, you will try to evaluate it on. You do have predictions, but you want to evaluate that model, so that you want to make sure how good that model is. Let's say if it gets deployed, if it is provided to the customer, how good that model is. And in order to do so, you will have a lot of evaluation over different performance metrics. Now, one way, which is a very common way, is to calculate accuracy, because most of the customers just understand simple accuracy, how many samples were correct, right? And this accuracy can be a broader term, but we should probably try to have performance metrics, or for example, accuracy per category. If you have such a sensitive data, you definitely need to have, for example, per the group of, for example, let's say that you only had two categories, male and female. So you need to have accuracy per one group, which was for males, and one group which was for female. This will let you know when one category is being treated unfavorably. So this will tell you that, okay, even though, so let's say this data set had 90% of samples as for male group. That's why the accuracy is perfect. And the overall accuracy was also perfect, because it's already skewed. And only 10% were female. Maybe for 10% female, it's only 1% accuracy that is given, just as an example. So this is not good. That means your machine learning model is not fair. So this is how you can also check after you have after you have built your machine learning model. You can check whether the accuracy per model, how was it? Accuracy per group, how was it? Then also you can solve for the unfairness. Now, if you know that this model, because of the data set, is tend to be unfair, so you first, of course, you need to collect more data associated with sensitive groups, but you also can use some debiasing techniques by offering ways to penalize not just for errors, but also have additional penalties for introducing or producing this unfairness. So penalty, for those of you who have maybe read about or know about reinforcement learning, things, something like that can be also applied here, offering penalty for producing unfairness. So for machine learning developers, so overcoming bias, I think I have typically talked about everything here. We need to embed and advance gender diversity, equity, and inclusion among the teams that have the data scientists in them. There should be diversity. The data should be also diversity. Should also have diverse examples. The algorithms also will be neutral only if the data is neutral. Then there should be, of course, the voices of marginalized community members, and should be there, including women, non-binary individual in the development of AI system. Now, today I'm still only talking about women, but there are a lot of genders out there, and if we only can currently talk about just two genders, this is already biasing, right? So, and we are still fighting for the second one. So, to be very honest, there now is the time to not just be aware about the problem, but also solve it. Now we are aware. First step is definitely to be aware about the problem, but I think now is the time to solve it also. Establish gender-sensitive governance approach for responsible AI. So yes, this is, as a data scientist, it's also our responsibility to ensure that the machine learning model or the algorithm that you are sending out there giving it to in the hands of the world, you need to ensure that there should be there should be the ethical AI codes and responsible AI codes being followed there, because otherwise it's a big problem. You cannot screw up a society just on the basis of some stereotypes. So this responsible AI point is really, really important. Social aspect is, of course, there. If we had a very ideal social world, then these problems wouldn't have even arise, because then everyone will be treated anyways fairly, and we don't have to do anything with the machine learning model. So that's why we also need to start from the source, which is because the data is screwed. So that's why we have such problems, and the data is because the humans are collecting such data, because there is still biasing available in the society. So use feminist data practices to help fill the data gaps. Lend your expertise to the field of gender equitable AI. Advocate for AI literacy training. Join the conversation. And within the society, you need to make sure whatever AI systems you are using, they are tackling gender gaps. Otherwise, you should probably provide feedback to the developers. As a society, this is our step. And yes, we definitely need to reshape the future. AI is perhaps now having even a child having AI on their phones with for example, ChatGPT and other AI tools out there. It's our responsibility to fight for the gender equality, and try to make the models as fair as possible. Even if you're not a developer, maybe giving a feedback to such apps even out there would be a first step. So like I said, being aware is a very important first step, but there are a lot of still open questions to be answered. So future definitely holds that we have a fair data set, trying to cover all the broader representation of all the gender variants, transgenders, non-binary, women, to help expand our understanding and how to handle such big data sets also. But for the start, we know that the data such equal data set doesn't exist anymore. So we have to try something with synthetic data, upsampling, and other approaches. Yes. So that's it from my side. Thank you. I hand over to the host then.
Looks like we have a few more minutes. So if anyone still has a question, please leave them in the chat. Oh, I actually see one question in the chat. Is there a predefined standardized metric test for identifying an AI ML tool as having gender bias?
So as far as I know, there is not. That's why I also talked about having this performance metrics per group, right? So that we can tackle if we get, for example, the scores or the accuracy, recall, precision, I don't know what, we get that for a particular group very low, this means your data definitely has bias.